Welcome everyone to today's webinar on actuarially transformed data at your fingertips. My name is Frank Cheung. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Accorded, an actuarial intelligence company. Thanks for joining us today. We will be reviewing and answering questions from the audience at the end of this presentation. So please do submit them in the Q&A feature if you have any as we present our new product offering. So I'm really excited to show you the first look at Accorded's new product offering. Accorded Acumen, the actuarial data transformation platform. As an actuary that has worked with health plans and providers over the last 18 years, I've seen the importance, the role that actuarial and medicon analytics teams have for business stakeholders. As we all know that there's a growing demand for these medicon and actuarial analytics as value-based care continues to proliferate. And Acumen was built to really meet that demand and solve for that challenge. Quick background on Accorded. Accorded is an actuarial intelligence company, and we have a mission to enable a frictionless and sustainable value-based care ecosystem. As you know, there are many dimensions to making this vision a reality. And through Acumen, Accorded's contribution to this vision is really to deliver scalable analytics via standardized, actuarially rigorous, and ready-to-use value-based care data assets to enable value-based care business stakeholders to really achieve their business goals. As I mentioned before, as value-based care expands, scalable actuarial analytics become really mission critical for organizations. However, traditionally, we know that actuarial and analytics teams simply cannot keep up with the demands of value-based care. We also have engineering teams that have been challenged to support internal analytics infrastructure and supporting and building out these workflows with limited to no success, given the lack of subject matter expertise most of these engineering and IT teams have on being able to not only build, but also maintain these analytic workflows as business needs and code sets change over time. This has repercussions across all business stakeholders that really depend on this type of analytics and creates bottlenecks for finance, commercial, and clinical ops. Finance specifically, oftentimes flying blind in terms of understanding how plan or risk contract performance is performing and how to strategically adjust to performance dynamics. Commercial teams having to wait sometimes months for analysis to evaluate contract opportunities and to close deals, and clinical ops teams that are using population health analytics tools, however, with limited visibility in terms of how their actions are making an impact on contract performance, financial performance, that drives bottom line P&L for an organization. And so really without these capabilities being built to scale from an operational perspective within an organization, the risks to an organization are just general underperformance, as well as, in the worst case scenario, disrupting care delivery. For most risk-bearing organizations, they don't have a source of truth when it comes to keep even the most basic performance metrics. So an example here would be an avoidable ED performance that's been baked into a risk contract. We had a finance team and clinical team trying to calculate this performance metric separately and coming up with different numbers, obviously creating a lot of friction within the organization around which metrics to believe, but also which metrics to really base their strategic decisions and operational actions on. So at Accorded, we've developed Acumen, the actuarial data transformation platform that can serve as that analytical source of truth for organizations and deliver actuarially rigorous and ready-to-use value-based care data assets, scalable analytics directly in your data stack. And the reason why we've chose to deliver in this way is because we understand that analytics teams, business users, especially in the healthcare arena, are averse really to having their workflows disrupted. So the best way for us to deliver these critical data assets that will help achieve your business goals is where you do most of your work or all of your work, which is in your existing data warehouse. So in that way, Acumen really helps companies generate the right types of insights, particularly at the right time. Time is money when it comes to value-based care contracting and understanding performance. So, waiting months or longer to understand how you're performing against contract or calculating the right opportunities in order to close a deal really jeopardizes business performance. Also, Acumen helps centralize these mission critical value-based care metrics so that clinical, finance, and business teams are all aligned. Metrics like care gaps, preventable ED, risk score trends, patient costs, member attribution, as well as cost and utilization trends are all critical metrics that ought to be available in real time for your organization to be able to react off of. We increase productivity and happiness of existing actuarial and medicon teams through the automation of rote, grunt, repetitive data work that oftentimes contributes to 80 to 90% of their time and effort, allowing them to focus more on the value additive components of their work, the 10 to 20%. We also free up engineering and IT teams to build for core business use cases and not actuarial or medicon or analytics workflow, oftentimes with limited to no success. How Acumen works is that we work with risk-bearing and provider entities to understand the input schemas designed to ensure that only necessary inputs are transferred and that we take what's minimally necessary in order to achieve and solve for the business needs. We build and maintain Acumen models that apply actuarial medicon logic into inbound claims data to generate mission-critical actuarial insights, key components like avoidable ED visits, avoidable inpatient admissions, risk scores, or even PACES episode groupers. We then deliver that data back into your data warehouse so that anyone with access to data warehouse from your business intelligence teams, your actuarial teams, your data science teams, your analysts will be able to use them in their workflows. Some examples of the Acumen models that we are able to run, the standardized models and the different levels and complexities of the models we are able to deliver for various use cases. So the building blocks of our models are what we call the foundational models. So these are kind of the core primitive metrics and analytical groupings that you would oftentimes see in population health analytics software tools or for common analytical models that actuaries would build or medicon analysts would build as a part of an analytics project. Those foundational models can be stacked and combined in order to deliver best practice operational analytics. So examples of this would be intermediate models that help define episodic reimbursement, models that help organizations understand what are the cost of care drivers from year over year or month over month, understand contract performance or help with capitation or Dover pricing. And then we have advanced models, which integrate foundational as well as intermediate models to solve even more complex business problems. Some examples of advanced models would be retrospective cost of care impact analysis or opportunity analysis for more specific targeted populations. And in my opinion, quite simply, these advanced models are what separates high-performing risk-bearing entities with the rest of the risk-bearing entity groups. An example of this would be something as simple as a foundational model calculating an avoidable ED metric. Acumen will be able to, in real time, give visibility into avoidable ED claims so that organizations would be able to build their workflows off of that metric in real time. The next level of utilization would be taking that avoidable ED metric and building a clinical ops table that allows them to identify avoidable ED frequent flyers. In this case, we're taking avoidable ED metrics and we're applying some encounter and business logic to enable clinical ops to engage with those frequent flyer members and identify them in order to maximize population health performance. An example of how this would apply to a more advanced model would be for an organization in which avoidable ED is a part of their performance metric when it comes to a value-based care contract, and it's a metric in which they are at risk for, one of the questions that might be asked would be, why are the avoidable ED reduction targets not being met? The reality of the situation is that most contracts will not have all of the conditions and stipulations laid out in terms of what could potentially cause variation to these outcomes. Most likely, being able to do more deep dive analysis on what's driving this miss you'll come to the realization that it's items or areas outside of your control, and being able to calculate what are the different variables that are driving this miss in target allows organizations to be responsive, communicate that openly to a payer partner, and potentially adjust the performance payment based on that type of analysis. And these are the type of advanced models that can be applied not just for something as simple as avoidable ED, but also for total cost of care, for being able to do deep dive analysis on how risk case mix changes impact your ability to perform, and being able to perform retrospective remediation with the plan when you're in a contract and you're looking to kind of adjust and reframe your performance relative to the analysis and data that's available. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into a demo. Relatively simple in terms of how this will be represented. So this would be a data warehouse example in which we're in a Snowflake data warehouse. Of course, this could be BigQuery, Amazon, or any other data warehouse that you're operating in. Here's an example of some feature tables that Accorded is managing and creating on behalf of the risk-bearing entity or provider. So we have looked at the NYU avoidable ED as an example. You can see that we're taking in claims data live from the partner. We're calculating and applying the NYU avoidable ED logic to define what the avoidable ED claims are, and we're creating metrics and data fields that can be used for performance measurement as well as operational analytics to help support a risk-bearing entity with this key performance metric. For a data analyst to be able to come in, they can use this table in their own analysis, or for a business analyst that needs to report on a metric, again, this table can be used into their own workflows. If there's any questions in terms of what these data fields mean, how the avoidable ED logic is being populated, we also have an admin portal that allows for users to come in, understand what the tables that Accorded Acumen is managing, the different methodologies. In this case, we have descriptors in terms of how the data table was being created, the data sources, the different integrations, as well as definitions on the data fields that you'll see within the data warehouse, so that for a user that is coming in net new, they'll be able to come into the admin portal, understand where the data is coming from, and then being able to apply it in their analysis appropriately based on the contextual information. So jumping back into the presentation, there are a few ways of working with Accorded. What we had just demoed is the Accorded Acumen model, designed and built to elevate your organization's analytical capabilities with actuarially transformed data tables managed via data warehouse integrations. And really the goal of Accorded Acumen is to solve for the bottleneck that exists among almost every single risk-bearing organization, in which the turnaround time and the output of existing analytical workflows and functions really aren't meeting the demands of the business users that really depend on this analysis to be done robustly and in a more timely manner. We add leverage to existing analytics teams, and for organizations that don't have actuarial and analytics teams, we also have actuarial concierge, in which we have last mile support to take the data tables and summarize, coalesce them, and synthesize them into reports and visualizations to help support business users that aren't as comfortable with working directly with data. We also have strategic guidance through our hundreds of years of combined experience of actuarial and BBC expertise experience to help support any strategic guidance in terms of contract design as well as implementation. And of course, for organizations that don't have a built-out data infrastructure just yet, our actuaries, as well as our subject matter experts, can provide best-in-class services powered by our technology. So why Accorded? Accorded really differentiates ourselves through modern data engineering married with actuarial DNA. Your business users could rely on our models, understanding that we apply actuarial best practices. Your analytics and actuarial teams will be able to interact with the models. And if there's configurations or methodology updates, that will be managed on our end, knowing that we have actuarial DNA to help support those changes in a reliable and trustworthy way. We're modular and customizable in that you can implement what you need and what your priorities are and build over time. We're not an enterprise software solution that looks to disrupt existing workflows. We're very scalpel-like in how we deliver your highest priority analytical needs in a way that is the most frictionless and seamless into your existing workflows. And we provide value from day one. We can deliver analytics outputs as quickly as a few business days, freeing up your engineering talent to really focus on other business critical priorities, and not having to make that trade-off in terms of how you're deploying those resources.